everyone. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Elizabeth, and today we are going over an introduction into cloud storage with OneDrive. And OneDrive is a personal cloud storage application, and it allows for secure access, storage, and sharing wherever you are. We are going to be looking at the big picture of your cloud storage, but really the focus of today's training is going to be on your personal drive, OneDrive. And without further ado, let's take a look at what we have today. So it is a storage solution, a cloud storage solution, and we're going to be looking at kind of the big picture again here of your cloud environment in Office 365 or Microsoft 365, depending on your license type. And let's take a look at what that looks like. So you may be hearing Microsoft 365, and if you have Office 365, that is your subscription. You do have OneDrive, SharePoint, you have all of these, a matter of naming. Microsoft 365 kind of brings in the back end of it with Azure, but Office 365 does provide you with the personal cloud storage and the shared cloud storage. So not to worry if you don't recognize Microsoft 365 and you're wondering what kind of license type you have. If you have Office 365, you do have OneDrive. So let's talk a little bit about OneDrive. Where does it fit in your cloud environment? Let's take a look at your work environment and how we can kind of move into the cloud. So this might look familiar. We have our main office, we have some people working remotely, and then we have the cloud. So in our main office, we have our file server, we have our personal drive, a shared drive, we have a domain controller, and then of course we have our hardware, computers, desktops, laptops, cell phones, tablets, all that good stuff we have. And then remote, we really only have our hardware at home. You're probably connecting through a VPN or a remote desktop, however you're connecting at home, not too much hardware, but what lives in the cloud, your mail, so you're getting that on your phone, and probably chat. So any application that you're using for instant messaging, anything like that, probably lives in the cloud. But now we're seeing a kind of shift in our work environments. We're seeing smaller office spaces, we're seeing less people in the office, and we're seeing a lot of people move to remote work. And that kind of changes how we need to access our files. We want to start thinking about putting things in the cloud and making sure that we have access and easy access to our company data no matter where we are. If you do have to work remote, if you have to move a different office, a smaller office space, we want to make sure that everybody is still getting those documents. And we want to start moving these things to the cloud so we can have our shared drives and personal drives in the cloud. We have our domain controller, even our phone systems. And I'm really excited to talk about that with you in another training, but we do have the ability to put your phones in the cloud as well. And so when we get into a Microsoft environment, this is how we are going to kind of move these things into the cloud. Chat will become Teams, we'll have Outlook for mail, SharePoint would be your shared drive, then OneDrive, what we're talking about today, will be your personal drive. We have Azure, which is kind of the back end, why you call us, F8, will help you out with that. And then, of course, our SyncSpeak phone service, which we can move into the cloud for you, which is really exciting. You can have a soft phone, you can have a physical phone, but really the kind of add-ons with the phone system are really exciting that you can throw in the cloud. They're really good stuff. And then you're kind of just left with your hardware, your devices, desktops, laptops, tablets, cell phones. So everything else in the cloud, really an ideal work environment. That's kind of like the dream, but we're really going to talk about how OneDrive fits into that grand cloud environment. I do want to give a little talk on Teams quickly because Teams is going to be your hub for communication and collaboration in this cloud environment. And we'll take a look at how that kind of plays into the big picture here. Teams is where we suggest you first take your documents out of OneDrive and start collaborating on them in Teams. And it's a really, really simple kind of integration there. If you check out our other training on the Core 4, you'll see how you can upload from OneDrive in there. Very simple stuff, but you can have internal meetings. We do live reviews at F8 here using Teams all the time, screen sharing. You can store files in there. They go right to SharePoint, which is a really cool integration we'll talk about in another training. But just to give you a kind of taste of the future here, this is where you're going to want to start, Teams. This is where your documents are going to leave your personal drive and end up, and then eventually they'll kind of go back and forth between Teams and SharePoint. And that's how you'll kind of work. And of course, Teams does integrate with some third-party apps. So if you are diehard Google Drive person, it does integrate with Google Drive. So Teams really the place where you want to be for collaborating on those documents. So Teams, as we said, chat, meetings, and apps and teams. And that's really where you're going to collaborate. But then you have these two, I want you to think of them as kind of buckets. You have OneDrive, which is really for your personal files, and then SharePoint, which is for shared documents. It's your internal reference place, documents that are not going to need too much work, kind of final draft, things in use. That's where you want to access them. But Teams is really where you want to collaborate. That's kind of the environment where you have documents kind of going in and out of, they're in circulation, they're inside Teams. OneDrive really for drafts and for your own personal documents that you aren't sharing with anybody else, maybe just one other person right out of your drive. But you really want to have your drafts there, things that aren't quite ready for collaborating yet, you want to keep in OneDrive, and then you can move them to Teams. So just to start getting you thinking about how your documents are kind of going to kind of move through this cloud environment, these are really where the documents are going to live. And then just to stress this one more time, OneDrive, great for your personal work files, personal stuff, just drafts, things that are not quite ready to be collaborated on yet. And then you have SharePoint, which is your documents once they are finished, once they've been through review in Teams, you talk about them, you've met about them, everybody's touched it, had their say, and it's done. It's going to go and be stored in SharePoint, and it will live there. However, both can be integrated with Teams, and most of the time you do want to start there as far as collaborating on your documents. So one more time, you have your personal space, that's in OneDrive, and then your collaborative space documents that have been passed around and edited together, they will live in SharePoint. So that's our big picture view. That's the kind of dream living in the cloud there. That's how you're going to use it. And now we are going to get started on OneDrive, and we're going to be defining how OneDrive can work for you. So first, what is OneDrive? What exactly is this cloud storage about? So it is a cloud storage and file hosting service, and it's a centralized location to help you store your files, a place that you can have your personal documents and drafts, things that you're not ready to share yet. Another benefit of having this in your workflow is that it syncs your files locally and remotely, which is really helpful. And it syncs with all your Office apps, so there's no issues with formatting. I know our friends who are using Google Drive, they do have that issue formatting from Word or Excel into a Google Doc. No headaches here, very simple integration and very seamless integration. It's great stuff. So files, again, you would store in your personal drive with a server. You would now save in OneDrive on the cloud. OneDrive does give you the ability to share documents and folders internally and externally. It is your personal decision with your company or organization how you'd like to use OneDrive, if it's just for internal collaboration or internal personal storage, or if you do want to give your employees or your team the ability to collaborate externally out of their OneDrive. But we do ask you that you share responsibly, as OneDrive may contain sensitive company info or data. So before you start getting to use OneDrive, you do want to sit down and define, decide, and develop some points here. You do want to define what confidential information is. You really want to make sure that your staff knows what is confidential information, what's not leaving the company, things that you definitely don't want leaked. And then you'll make decisions. You'll decide what will be stored in OneDrive and if it will be used for internal sharing or internal and external sharing. And if it is used for external sharing, how will you use it securely? How will you make sure that there is no kind of breach or leak of data? You really want to make sure that you're using it securely, and then you will develop your policies for sharing and storing with OneDrive. So once you've defined and decided what you will kind of be using OneDrive for, it is a personal storage kind of place for your personal documents, then you can kind of make company-wide policies and make sure that everybody is using the tool the same way and using it securely, most importantly. And now we'll get to working in OneDrive, and this is getting to know the basics about your personal cloud storage. And first, we'll talk about navigating OneDrive. And this is how to find your functions, where to find what you're doing in here. And when you open up OneDrive, this is what it's going to look like. Well, this is what mine looks like. You have the option to have it in tiles or lists, and we will talk about personalizing in just a minute. But these are the functions. So here on the left-hand side, you see this kind of toolbar, taskbar here. You have your files, recent, share, discover, and your recycle bin. Discover is probably leaving at the end of 2021, the end of 2020. So by 2021, it won't be there anymore. So don't get too used to it. But you do have recent, which shows files that you've recently shared or worked on. Then you have your shared documents, and then you have your recycle bin. If you accidentally delete anything, you have 93 days, that's the magic number, 93, to go ahead and retrieve that document that's in your recycle bin. And then right below, here's a sneak peek into the future here, your shared libraries. These are actually SharePoint sites. So if you are syncing SharePoint to your OneDrive, you will see your SharePoint sites here. So that's another way that you can navigate through your kind of cloud environment. We're getting ahead of ourselves there. That's another training for another day, but just a peek into the future. Then we have our new tab here. Right in OneDrive, you can start a new folder to organize your documents, or you can start a new document right here in OneDrive. You can upload files or folders from your local drive or your device right into OneDrive. You can sync to your device. You can also choose how you'd like your files displayed in alphabetical order, when they're modified, and you can have them in ascending or descending order. And then here you'll choose your view, if you want them in tiles or a list or a compact list, and we will look at what your OneDrive will look like now, depending on what you choose, list or tiles. And this is personalizing your OneDrive. This is getting to see your files the way that you would like to see them. That really depends on what you're putting in OneDrive. So the first list view that we have is a list or compact list view. This is the list view. If you do choose compact list, it's going to just be a little tighter in there. And this is best for filing documents, a lot of Word documents in alphabetical order, or viewing things from newest to oldest or oldest to newest, however you would like them to be displayed, but really good for written documents. And the other view is tile view, and this provides larger thumbnails, which is great if you are using OneDrive for photos or charts. You get a picture of that, and it really makes it easier for you to search through your files that way. So here we have a kind of side-by-side or top and bottom view of the list and the tile view, and it's really up to you on how you would like to view your files in your OneDrive. Again, depending on what you are putting in there, will kind of help you decide which view will work best for you. So starting your documents, you can upload or start new documents in your personal drive in OneDrive, and you have a few options on how to do that. The first one is starting a new document right in OneDrive. And if we are remembering just a few minutes back into our navigation slide, we have this new button here, and that's where you can create a new folder or a new document. Just a word of advice here. If you do decide to start right from OneDrive, you will begin in the web application. It's not going to be the desktop app. Some applications in the web version, you will have some limitation on the functionality. So just little warning there, if you will, that if you do start in OneDrive, it will start in the web application. There is a button that you can push in the web app that will take you to the desktop version. So it's not too big of a deal, not really, anything to sweat. You can start in OneDrive and then move to the desktop app. Not a big deal. The second way that you can do this is uploading a document from your local drive, and that would just be through that upload button, and you can choose either one file or whole folders to upload right into your OneDrive there. And the last option is to drag and drop from a local drive to a OneDrive. And in the next slide, I'm going to show the drag and drop feature. So let's jump ahead to the next slide. So this is really more about storing your files in OneDrive and how to move around the documents. So we'll take a look at that first. So to move a document, you'll select the folder or the document that you'd like to move around, and then you will click on the Move To or Copy To buttons up there. And from that, you'll get a drop-down menu, and you can choose if you would like that document to be moved around inside your OneDrive, or if you would like that document to be moved to SharePoint. It's just one way to move around the documents. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it through Teams, which is the way that we suggest you do it. But if you're in OneDrive and you just want to quickly move around a document, you can do it this way. The second way is to drag and drop into a folder. We are going to do this by moving something from our local drive into our OneDrive, which is what we were talking about in the slide previous to this. And it works the same way with moving things around. So if you want to take something from your local drive and move it into your OneDrive, your cloud storage, it's super simple. You'll just click on it and drag it straight down into your OneDrive. Doesn't get easier than that. Very simple way to kind of move around your documents from a locally stored location into your cloud drive. Very, very simple, and then it will live there. You can copy it there, however you'd like to do it. Very, very simple, easy way to get things from your locally stored drive, your personal drive, into your cloud storage. And now I want to talk about sharing from OneDrive, and this is collaborating on files from your personal drive. I really suggest that you use this if you are only sending this to one person, maybe two people in your organization. because OneDrive is really for your personal documents, and you really only want to move these documents out of OneDrive when you are ready to use them with your team and put them in Teams and kind of use them there before they get moved into SharePoint, the shared drive. So to share from your OneDrive, we'll go through this pretty quickly. It's very, very simple. You'll select the folder or the file that you'd like to share. And then the first way that you can do it is click on the share button, and then you'll see these two buttons at the bottom to copy the link, and that way you can copy the link and put it into Teams in an IM if you'd like, or you can open it in Outlook, which is a really great way. It generates the email for you right in Outlook, and we'll send the link that way. So really, really simple way that Microsoft gave you to kind of share your file if they're in a link with Outlook, using Outlook. And then if you click on this little box here, you do get some link settings. So if you see that your box looks like this and anyone with the link is kind of dimmed and you can't click on it, that means that your organization or your company has limited your sharing capabilities to internal collaboration only, which is fine. That's what we use it here at F8 for. We don't collaborate externally on these platforms, and it just keeps everything a little more secure, a little tighter in your organization. But if you choose to use it externally, that's also up to you. It's a great tool to kind of share just one document out of. You just want to be wary of where you're sharing it from. The last that I'll say about that. And then you do have the box there to allow editing. If you uncheck that box, the document will become a read-only document for whoever you are sharing that document with. So you do have some control on permissions when you are sharing a document from your personal drive, which is very, very good stuff. Then we have the copy link button. It works just like that copy link option under share, except this generates the link right there for you, and you can either click on to get it, copy it to your clipboard, and then just copy it into an email, IM, same thing, wherever you'd like. And then you do have the link settings here as well, with the ability to turn off editing and make it a read-only document. So that's sharing from OneDrive. Very, very simple stuff. And again, not really meant for sharing with an entire team straight from your OneDrive. For that, we do suggest that you go ahead and you upload through Teams. And this is just for a quick glance. In your OneDrive, once you are sharing a document, you will see this little symbol show up at the bottom of a folder. So if you are sharing a whole folder, I'm sharing my social media folder because you collaborate a little bit in there. Maybe I've shared it to Teams. The symbol does appear, and that way at a quick glance, you know kind of what you're sharing. Maybe you stop sharing something and you want to make sure that it's not shared. If you don't see that symbol, you're not sharing it. So that's just a quick way that you can check which documents in your drive are being shared. And now my favorite is collaborating. I love working in a team. I love teamwork. So collaborating in OneDrive, working with your team from your personal drive. This is where where the magic happens, right? In your OneDrive. So as I said before, you can start documents in OneDrive and work from the browser, or you can open it up in the app. But when you're working on a document at the same time, I do want to just point out some things that can happen when you're working in the browser in the application. So when you're working in the browser, everything will save automatically to OneDrive, which is great. You don't have to, make sure that you're clicking save or saving over anything. As you're making those changes, they're happening, they're syncing to OneDrive. You can make an edit and click right out of it. It will save. As long as it says saved at the top bar there, you're good to go. So not too many extra steps. Another benefit of using the browser is that all parties will see the changes as they occur. So if you are working with a bunch of people in the browser, you'll see a bunch of little initials and flags all over the place. You can see where your team is in the document, and all those changes will happen in real time, which is really great. You don't have to worry about where people or wonder where they are working now. You can upload an existing document or start a new one in a browser, which is a great feature. And you can also create the shareable link as we just showed you before. So those are some benefits of working in the browser. However, in the application, you do have the full capacity and functionality of the app when you're using the desktop version, the desktop application. And this is really most important when you're doing things like Excel, where you really need the full functionality. It's not, just a reference. If you just need to reference it, you can do it in the browser. That's great. But sometimes you do need a little more oomph. And for that, you do want to open in the desktop app. But when you are working in the desktop app, if you take it out of the browser, just please be sure to click that sync save button. Maybe you just know it as save. It's that little floppy disk at the top of your screen there. And as you click that button, then the changes will reflect with each refresh in the browser. So if one person is in the browser and you choose to work in the application, they still will be able to see those changes. You just got to click that button at the top. And before you exit out of the application, you do want to make sure that you're saving. So that's important, something that you don't really have to worry about in the browser too much. A benefit of starting in the application before you move to OneDrive is that you can choose whether or not you even want to put it in your cloud storage. We do recommend to put it somewhere that's not locally stored. If anything happens to your machine or to your device and it's locally stored, you may not be able to get it back. So you do want to make sure that you're putting it somewhere that you will be able to retrieve it. But if you choose to just save it locally, maybe you have Wi-Fi to access everything and you do want to save it locally, you can choose whether or not you want to do that in the application. And one little caveat to working in the application is that you cannot create the shareable link as you would in the browser. But if you want to create a link, all you have to do is upload it to OneDrive and boom, it's ready to create a link. Nothing to sweat, really not a big deal. However, in both, you do have the ability to work on the same document as anybody in your team at the same time on either platform. So if you're more comfortable using the application, the desktop app, go right ahead and use that. And meanwhile, everybody else can be working in the browser, or some people in the browser, some people in the app. It's not going to bar you from opening in any location. If I'm working in the browser, you can still go ahead and open it in the application. Not a big deal. Everybody will always have access to that document as long as we are still sharing it from OneDrive. Another great thing about cloud storage, specifically in OneDrive and in SharePoint, is versioning. And this is a feature which tracks changes in your document. And it's really, really great for once you share a document out of your OneDrive, if some changes are happening that you don't like or you don't love, or maybe your messaging is lost, you can go back and restore a version from the past. So the first thing that you want to do is select the document that you would like the versioning history on, and you will then click on these ellipses at the top of the toolbar here, and you will see the versioning option. And if you click on versioning, you'll get this dialog box, and you'll see all the versions of that document that you've been working on. If you're not sure which one you want to restore, you can kind of click through them, find the one that you'd like, and then you can either choose to restore that previous version, or you can even delete versions that you definitely don't want to keep, that you don't want in circulation anymore. You can delete those versions. So that's just a word on versioning. Really, really great to maintain your message once you share a document, to make sure that you have the document the way that you have originally intended to use that document. So really good stuff in OneDrive versioning. So working in OneDrive, again, I just want to stress one more time that this is really for your personal documents. This is for your drafts. This is where you want to start thinking about ideas that you want to share with your team, things that are not quite ready for collaboration or quite ready for anybody else's eyes. Keep them in your OneDrive. That's your personal storage place. That's your location. That's your bucket. That's your place where your documents will live in your OneDrive. And then your team documents, they will live in SharePoint. Once those documents are done going through the edits and changes that they need to go through, they'll live in SharePoint. But I do want to one more time stress the importance of Teams, how Teams is going to play into this. Please don't forget about Teams. I hope that you're using the Core 4 strongly and confidently now from our very first training. I don't want you to forget about in this big picture, because a lot of your collaboration is going to happen in there. A lot of your editing, a lot of your meeting is going to happen in there. And of course, once we do talk about SharePoint, it's going to be really vital to accessing your documents through Teams, because you're going to want to kind of have your folder and file structure in there. You want to be able to collaborate with your team in there, and you ultimately want to be able to access everything straight from Teams. So just keep that in the back of your mind, file it in there. Please just don't forget about Teams. And that is it for us today. We learned about storing and sharing easier in OneDrive. I had a great time going through OneDrive with you today, and of course going over the bigger picture for your cloud storage, and I can't wait to meet with you again. Have a great day and stay safe out there. Bye-bye.